Hi, this is The Sun, and this is how I made Mindcloud, which was just released as part of my album 20 Days. So this track is called Mindcloud. I think I made it on maybe day 4 or 5 of the 20-day album. I kind of wanted to make a techno track but keep it really tight, pounding but also melodic in a way. I finished the day after maybe 6 hours. I had something pretty close to how it sounds now. I didn't overwork it, and that's sort of part of the magic, I think, for this one. It's quite raw. I didn't really think about it too much. I was just sort of writing. There's a lot of subtle changes. You can't really feel massive changes in terms of structure, but the actual drum sounds are constantly moving and shifting, and the kick is actually changing decay as well, which sort of gives that feeling of change. And yeah, there's only 2 real musical ideas in it, and the rest is just drums and just keeping those drums really tight. So yeah, breaking down some individual elements I think are worth talking about. The kick here, it's just a common thing for me to do, is to just have 2 kicks, one on top of each other. I've got the high kick here, which is just a 707. I always use the 707 kick. It just cuts through everything. It's amazing. And then I have the low end, which is usually a different low end that I find from something. It can be like a slightly distorted kick or an 808 or a 909. And then I think during recording I was tweaking the decay of it, and you can hear in the breaks I've sort of cut it. And then it comes in with the bass, but it's still much shorter. And then when the actual section kicks in, you can feel the tails a lot longer. And that gives the impression of intensity, really. If I played the drums on their own, you can hear even the ride is like really tight there. You've got lots of little auxiliary percussion coming in, so it sort of pulls the attention. But yeah, having those gaps between the notes and the hits makes all the difference, I think. So yeah, that's kind of like the basis of this whole track, keeping it really tight but still impactful. So going down to the sub, I've really just used a plugin for this. I used the Moog Mini V, which I really like. It's really effective. I think I got to like the mixing stage of it and it didn't sound too strong, so I was like, oh, what can I do? And like I just threw this on and it worked straight away. I was just tweaking a preset. Let me play on its own. Just a strong Moog sound, a little bit like a fart, but that's fine. And then that's like layered with this sound, so together. Yeah, so I've got a lot of side chaining on this. You can see it's pulling it right down. I think with the other bass, yeah, this is. So with the other bass, I haven't actually side chained it because there's other information in there. There's like some little clicks and claps going on in there in the recording, which I decided to keep in. So what I've done, I've used a filter and used that as side chaining. So I'm just using the native Ableton filter and then running a sidechain through it, so it's just pulling up that bottom end whenever the kick comes in. That's really good if you've got information at the top end that you don't want to get rid of. With all those 3 together, that works really well with the tight kick, the sustained sub, and then this modular bass on top, giving you that plucky feel. Just highlight this a bit. So this is something I use a lot, which is the Carpless Strong effect on basses and synths and not even necessarily musical ideas. It can be a drum and you can add a pitch to it using pitch resonance, which is running the sound through a delay and dropping the delay time so much, or shortening the delay time so much that it becomes a pitch, it becomes a tone, which you can then play over a keyboard. So I'm doing that a lot. You can hear it here. It's got that sort of resonance feel, and it brings out these weird harmonics that you couldn't otherwise make, I think. So yeah, this is something I do a lot. And I can even show you here, I've got this set up. So if I turn this off, so this is a similar idea to what we've got here. Slightly different, but for the sake of example, you can hear that tone coming out. And I'm really just playing with the filter a little bit and increasing the feedback. And then we can play it across the keyboard, just going up in pitch. So put some context. So yeah, you will hear that crop up quite a bit in my music. And then I suppose we just have the melody that comes in around halfway through, which is this idea. Which again is using the pitch resonance that I was just talking about. I think this is probably distorted, so I think I've gone from the module plats into a distortion unit and then into my delay, because you can hear those harmonics, those resonant harmonics really coming out in the top end. And then I'm just playing with it, so just stretching that idea out, using echoes and delays. I've got a little Sound Toys crystallizer on it as well, and that's just taking the sound and playing it back but in reverse. So it's like a reverse delay, so you can hear that. Technically it's called a granular echo synthesizer, but it's just a delay. And yeah, that's really it for the idea. It's nice and simple, stretched out, and I got to this. There is one more thing to talk about, and that is the vocal in this, which is another way I sort of pulled out melodies without doing a typical melodic pads and whatnot. So you can hear they've got a tone to them. They're effective. They've got a chorus on them, but it is an actual. It's a melodic idea. You know, you can and it's memorable because it's so unusual, but it's also the melody that might get stuck in your head. You know. So yeah, I think I was just playing around with. I won't tell you the source of the sample because I'll probably get sued. But I think I was just playing around with this sound you can hear, and just cut it up and came to that, and it came together. It went well. One of the interesting things about modular is that I can automate stuff using CV. So I'll be working on a sound and just plugging stuff in, not too worried about where I'm going. And then I might get something that sounds crazy or amazing or weird. And that can be a seed of an idea. So this setup here really becomes my ideas machine. So when starting a track off, I'll basically just look for that really interesting little tidbit of an idea, like a seed of an idea that I can then form a track from. So typically I'll just start with a simple beat, something like from this Fracture module I was talking about earlier. Let's try a bit of variation. Just cycling through samples, looking for something I like. And then I'll start plugging my my sequencer into the modular. So I'm going to plug gates, just a trigger, into this Akemi's Taiko module. Let's pull everything out so you can hear it raw. So you can hear it almost, it sounds like a very simple tom. And then I'll start plugging in modulation. So I can do this randomly, or I can think about it and say, okay, maybe we want some, we want to change the style of waves slowly over time, so we get sort of a nice dynamic feel. So you can hear, and that's just CV modulation coming from Pamela's new workout. which is just the mother of all CV modulation. And then I'll just sort of quite like the sound of that, so maybe try something else. And now I'm just modulating the delay, the decay of the tom sound or the synth sound. And you can hear that slowly, automatically changing the decay of it. And then I suppose we just add some drums. Get a feel for the idea itself. Play with it a bit more. Drop it down a bit. There we go. One of the interesting things about this module is that I can then play with the ratio or the pitch through CV, so I don't have to actually use volt per octave. I can play with the ratio, which is sort of circle of fifths. If I have a little play and see where I get to with that. So it's sort of randomly cycling through the circle of fifths, which can be really interesting. It can also sound crap, but it sounds alright, I think. Again, constantly shifting, which is nice. So at this point I would already be recording into the computer. I probably would have had this idea in by now, maybe recording some of the drums. And I'm certainly tracking like a whole 6 minute loop. I won't just be doing like 8 bars or 16 bars. It'll be almost the full track, so it's constantly changing. It's never the same, which I think adds a lot. If you're just sort of having the same loop going round and round, the ear gets really tired, you know. So yeah, this is sort of like the basic seed of an idea for me. And then I'll often just use toms or something from the sampler for a low end, which for dance music is arguably the most effective thing, I think. So having a melody overlaid with toms. And yeah, that's how I would basically kick off the track. Record it in, track it in, and then just pull out those ideas as much as I can, really.